Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the chic neighborhood of Midtown Manhattan, the Rosewood Imperial Hotel stood as a monument to luxury and prestige. Its glass and steel facade caught the golden morning light, reflecting the power and wealth of those who passed through its doors each day. Inside, polished marble, glittering chandeliers, and Persian rugs created a setting worthy of the grandest palaces, where opulence seemed natural, almost immutable. The suites, exquisitely decorated, offered breathtaking views of the New York skyline. Guests, businessmen in three-piece suits, movie stars, and diplomats, moved through them with calm assurance, awaited and pampered at every turn. For them, the Rosewood Imperial wasn't just a hotel, it was a sanctuary, a promise of excellence. But behind those gilded walls, beyond the polite smiles and champagne glasses, a very different reality unfolded, invisible to the guests. Behind the scenes, in the basements, in the staff corridors, another story unfolded, a story of shadows, enforced silences, and buried injustices. In this secret world, the women and men who maintained the splendor of the Rosewood, those called the cleaning staff, lived a daily life of invisible efforts and silent fatigue. Their work was heavy, thankless, and often despised. Their voices, muffled by the demands of luxury, never crossed the threshold of the management offices. It was in this context that Madeleine Turner, 42, newly appointed CEO, settled into her spacious office with ambition burning deep in her eyes. Elegant, measured, and respected by her peers, Madeleine wielded authority with natural ease. Yet beneath her impeccable exterior lay a woman born far from the glitterati, from a modest background where success had been earned through hard work and unwavering determination. Since her first steps in the company, Madeleine had climbed the ladder, confronting prejudices and obstacles with intelligence and integrity. Her journey had given her a keen eye for the reality of the working world, but also for the often ignored disparities. But since she took office, a feeling of unease had never left her. She felt an invisible divide growing between the senior staff and the so-called rank-and-file employees. The condescending tone of some managers, the shifty glances, the forced smiles of the cleaning ladies, all of this resonated within her like a bitter echo of injustice. The smooth, sanitized quarterly reports never told the real story. The meetings where people talked about improving the social climate remained superficial and hollow. Madeleine knew that behind these numbers, these well-calibrated phrases, lay human wounds and silent suffering. One summer morning, with the sun barely filtering through the tinted windows, Madeleine stood in front of the large bay window of her office. Her gaze wandered to the hive of activity below. Then, closing her eyes for a moment, she whispered to herself, "I must see for myself. Understand what words don't say. I will pretend to be one of them. To feel, to see, to act." This risky, daring decision was going to turn his life upside down, but also that of the entire hotel. At 5:30 a.m. on a Monday morning, with the city still asleep under a thick veil of fog and only a few faint lights flickering on the silent streets, Madeleine Turner quietly stepped through the service entrance of the Rosewood Imperial Hotel. The light click of her flat shoes on the cold tile floor was the only music in the deserted hallway. She wore a crisp, well-fitting navy blue uniform, her hair pulled back in a neat bun under a cap that partially concealed her face. From her collar hung a badge marked, Maria G. A hastily chosen name, neutral and common, designed to go unnoticed. In this outfit, she was no longer the hotel's general manager, but just another housekeeper, invisible to the world. As she timidly walked toward the locker room, she felt the barely veiled stares of the other women present. They whispered to each other, sizing each other up, but none seemed to recognize her. Not even Letitia, the head housekeeper, a woman with a stern face, marked by years of fatigue and rigor, who commanded the team with an iron fist. Letitia stared at her coldly, her piercing gaze piercing Maria, as if trying to read beyond her disguise. "You, new girl," she said curtly, "follow Rosa. And don't hang around." Letitia's voice left no room for discussion. Wordlessly, Madeleine looked down, her throat tight, but obeyed. She knew that in this world, docility was often the only weapon left to them. She followed Rosa, a warm-looking woman in her 50s who exuded a quiet wisdom. Rosa showed her the equipment, the products to use, and the areas to clean first. Madeline became Maria. In this role, she walked cautiously, trying to imitate the gestures learned in the training videos, but above all, she felt every second the exhaustion of this task, the heaviness of the broom, the coldness of the corridors. She forced herself to remain silent, not to attract attention. But very quickly, the harshness of everyday life imposed itself on her like a brutal wall. In the immaculate hallways of the upper floors, where wealthy clients expected perfection, Madeline noticed that she was often completely ignored. Sometimes she was shoved almost without apology, as if she were merely an object, a parasite in this world of luxury. What shocked her most was the behavior of the management staff. As she absent-mindedly dusted a brushed steel railing, a voice sounded behind her, harsh and impatient. "Hurry up, Maria. Do you want your salary or not?" She jumped and turned slowly. It was Jason, a white supervisor in his 30s, with a hard gaze and a sarcastic tone. Another voice joined in, mocking. "Another one who doesn't understand English. We'll never get along with people like you." Madeline felt her face burn, but she kept silent, gritting her teeth. Then, a more general remark, made by another executive who was passing in the corridor. "The cleaning ladies are all the same, no initiative, just good at following orders." She lowered her head even further, the weight of those invisible but heavy words on her shoulders. She understood now, in all its brutality, what these women experienced every day, a silent battle against contempt and indifference, a struggle to maintain their dignity despite everything. Every step, every look, every sharp word reminded her how far she had been from this reality. And yet, there she was, ready to see, to feel, to understand. One afternoon, as the July sun slanted through the large windows of the 28th floor, Madeline walked down the silent hallway, a damp cloth in hand. She had almost finished cleaning a lavish suite when she overheard a conversation in the next lobby. Thomas Caldwell, the front desk manager, a man in his 40s with a cold, calculating smile, was joking with a wealthy client, an elderly lady dressed in an impeccable Chanel suit. "The rooms are clean, don't worry," Thomas said with a forced smile. "Even small hands without diplomas can follow instructions now." The customer laughed softly, visibly reassured, while Thomas turned his gaze towards Maria, with a disdainful air, as if to indicate that this little hand was a mere accessory in this luxurious setting. Madeline felt a lump form in her throat. She gritted her teeth, trying not to let her confusion show. But what she was experiencing was only the surface of what she would soon discover. A few minutes later, her steps led her to the staff kitchen, a vast room with immaculate white tiles, but one that echoed with palpable tension. There, a scene unfolded that deeply shocked her. Angela, a young black woman in her 30s, crouched near a rug, her hands trembling. Her face was red from unshed tears. Opposite her, Letitia, the head housekeeper, gave her an icy stare. "Do you want to lose your job, Angela?" Letitia snarled sharply. "There are 10 like you waiting outside, ready to take your place. Go wash away your shame." Angela stammered an apology, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. Without a word, she stood up and returned to work, her gait heavy, her eyes misty. Madeline stood frozen, the scene wrenching her heart. She understood that for these women, every day was a battle not only against fatigue, but against a system that crushed their dignity. But in this sometimes oppressive atmosphere, Madeline discovered an unexpected light, the warmth and solidarity between the invisible, those that the outside world forgot. Rosa, a 55-year-old Guatemalan woman with a face marked by life but lit by a reassuring gentleness, took her under her wing. Without question, she welcomed her like a sister. At each break, Rosa shared her homemade tortillas, wrapped in a clean cloth, and told her stories about her family back in Guatemala. "Here, Maria," she explained, smiling, "you do your work, you smile, and you go home. Don't expect anything else. But between us, we support each other. That's what keeps us going." Madeline listened, absorbed every word, every look, every gesture of these women who, despite the contempt of the managers, kept the hotel running. She mentally noted every word, every injustice, every moment of solidarity. Her heart tightened a little more each day, caught between anger and admiration. She knew this experience would change everything. Friday evening, 6 p.m. The Rosewood Imperial's grand lobby, usually bathed in soft light and animated by the comings and goings of guests, was steeped in an atmosphere of expectation. Crystal chandeliers cast cold shards across the immaculate marble, while the staff slowly gathered, murmuring nervously. The murmurs grew louder. The announcement had come directly from management. Some spoke of the owner's presence, others whispered about a possible restructuring. The communications team was there, cameras and microphones at the ready. It was clear this would be an important moment, perhaps a decisive one. Madeleine Turner stood in the shadows for a moment, observing the crowd she'd spent all week silently surrounded by. Their faces betrayed concern, curiosity, and even fear. Among them, Thomas Caldwell, the head receptionist, seemed particularly tense, glancing furtively around him. Letitia, the head housekeeper, kept her head down, avoiding eye contact. Then, with newfound confidence, Madeleine stepped through the lobby doors. This time, she was herself. In a sleek, perfectly cut black suit, her heels echoing on the floor like a statement of power. Her hair was loose, framing her determined face. On her jacket, an official badge proudly read, Madeleine Turner, Managing Director. A murmur ran through the assembly. The shock was palpable. Thomas took a step back, pale. Letitia looked up timidly, her features tense. Madeleine stepped onto the stage, took a deep breath, then looked intently at the audience. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice clear and firm. "I'm Madeleine Turner, General Manager of the Rosewood Imperial, and this week, I've been Maria, housekeeper." Silence fell. Total. A heavy suspension of time where no one dared to move, speak, breathe. "I've seen how you speak to those who clean up your mistakes," she continued, her piercing gaze sweeping the room. "I've heard your mockery behind their backs. I've observed the contempt, the daily humiliations, but above all, I've discovered the unshakable dignity of those who say nothing, who bear everything in silence." She paused for a moment, then stared intently at Thomas Caldwell. "I saw a receptionist openly mock the working class. I saw a housekeeper humiliate devoted mothers. I saw broken smiles in those sumptuous corridors, hidden behind the ceremonial walls." The tension in the room became almost tangible. A solemn silence followed, then Madeleine resumed, with almost solemn gravity. "Starting today, things are going to change. Radically." She paused, letting her words resonate. "That's not a threat, it's a promise. Rosewood Imperial will never again be a place where greatness is measured by arrogance or contempt. It will be a place of respect, fairness, and justice." She looked everyone in the eye, as if to make sure her message was received. Discriminatory behavior, humiliation, abuse. They will be punished without compromise. Together, we will rebuild an environment where every employee, from the most humble to the most senior, will regain their dignity. Madeleine slowly stepped down from the stage, a low murmur of emotion rippled through the audience. Some were in shock, others were beginning to understand that this night marked a turning point. In this great hall, bathed in light and silence, a new era was born. In the weeks following Madeleine's announcement, a wind of change blew through the Rosewood Imperial. The staff immediately sensed that the atmosphere had changed, that the era of contempt and enforced silence was coming to an end. But real transformation required more than words, it required strong, visible, and lasting actions. The first measure was radical and symbolic. Thomas Caldwell, the head of reception, responsible for multiple incidents of arrogance and disdain toward cleaning staff, was fired with immediate effect. The announcement sent shockwaves through the management. The news spread quickly, lifting a veil of impunity that had hung over the company for too long. Shortly after, Letitia, the head housekeeper, was subject to a disciplinary suspension. While she had been appreciated for her efficiency, her authoritarianism and repeated humiliations toward the housekeepers would no longer be tolerated. Her absence marked a turning point in the daily lives of the cleaning crews. But beyond sanctions, Madeline set about thoroughly overhauling internal operations. With the help of human resources experts and consultants specializing in workplace equity, she launched a complete overhaul of the personnel management system. The formerly cold and bureaucratic relationships were replaced with a more transparent system, with regular surveys on the social climate and mandatory training on respect and diversity. One of the most significant moments was the creation of an Ethics and Pay Equity Committee, a unique space where employees, regardless of their rank, could express themselves freely. This committee was entrusted to Rosa, the kind Guatemalan who had supported Madeline during her immersion, as well as several other employees elected by their peers. Their mission, to ensure justice within the hotel, fight against discrimination, and propose concrete improvements. For Angela, this new era was an unexpected opportunity. Recognizing her courage and dignity despite the humiliations she had suffered, Madeline promoted her to supervisor of the cleaning crew. Angela, moved and proud, became a living symbol of change, a strong voice for those who had been silenced for too long. But the reform most eagerly awaited by all the cleaners was undoubtedly the salary increase, accompanied by a weekly discussion forum. Every Friday morning, a time was now set aside for employees to interact directly with management, share their challenges and ideas, and find solutions together. At an important meeting before the board of directors and shareholders, Madeline gave a speech that is etched in the memory. A five-star hotel is worthless, if its heart is rotten. True greatness is not measured by wealth or prestige, but by how we treat everyone, from the humblest employee to the most demanding customer. Today, the Rosewood Imperial rises again, not just in its facade, but in its soul. Together, we are building a future where respect and dignity are no longer empty words. The applause that followed was long and sincere, mixing emotion and hope. In the corridors, smiles gradually reappeared, gestures softened, and a new pride grew in the eyes of those who kept the hotel running on a daily basis. The road was still long, but for the first time, it was open. A year later, the Rosewood Imperial shone with a new light. That morning, in the large reception room, the entire team gathered for a solemn ceremony. The hotel had just received the prestigious National Workplace for Equality and Respect Award, a rare distinction rewarding companies most committed to the fight against discrimination and the promotion of a fair working environment. Camera flashes popped, applause erupted, and laudatory speeches followed. The media were present, capturing every moment of this collective victory. But what no one saw that morning was Madeline Turner away from the spotlight, in a small adjoining staff room. Sitting at a simple table, she shared a modest meal with Rosa, her mentor and friend. Between bites of Guatemalan spiced empanadas, they laughed heartily, exchanging memories and secrets. Far from the official stage and the applause, this moment of intimacy embodied true victory, fraternity rediscovered, solidarity forged, respect restored. Rosa, her eyes sparkling, placed a warm hand on Madeline's. "You may not have been a real housekeeper," she said softly, smiling, "but you had a clean heart." These words resonated in Madeline's soul like the greatest reward. For beyond the trophies and the recognition, it was there, in this shared sincerity, that real change resided. The Rosewood Imperial was no longer just a five-star hotel. It had become a home where everyone mattered, where dignity no longer depended on role or uniform, but on human worth. And Madeline knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning of a long road, but that together, they were ready to travel it.